Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Geek and Dorks Reviews. I'm your host, John Lorden, the head geek at Geek and Dorks, the channel. And I'm here to talk about a movie. I actually looked at IMDB. They have a list of their top, I think they had 100 mystery documentaries. And smack at the top of that list is a movie called The Thin Blue Line. And this movie's been out for a while. This is actually from 1988. So I thought, why not? Let's check out IMDb's top-rated mystery documentary. I watched it last night, and just to give you a brief overview, this is, of course, from IMDb.com. The tagline on it is pretty interesting as well. A softcore movie, Dr. Death, a chocolate milkshake, a nosy blonde, and the Carol Burnett Show. Solving this mystery is going to be murder. And just to give you a brief on it, it is essentially about a police officer that is shot, a man that is convicted for that crime, and then another man who is likely the guy that actually created this whole nightmare for the first guy. Let's go into, here's a plot summary on it. Minor spoilers here, but let's see. Errol Morris's unique documentary dramatically reenacts the crime scene and investigation of a police officer's murder in Dallas, Texas. Briefly a drifter, Randall Adams, ran out of gas and was picked up by a 16-year-old runaway, David Harris. Later that night, they drank some beer, smoked some marijuana, and went to the movies. Then their stories diverged. Adams claimed that he left for his motel, where he was staying with his brother, and went to sleep. Harris, however, said that they were stopped by police late that night, and Adams suddenly shot the officer approaching their car. The film shows the audience the evidence gathered by the police, who were under extreme pressure to clear the case. It strongly makes a point that the circumstantial evidence was very flimsy. In fact, it becomes apparent that Harris was a much more likely suspect and was in the middle of a crime spree, eventually ending up on death row himself for the later commission of other crimes. Morris implies that the DA's and the judge's desire for the death penalty in this case, for which Harris would not have been eligible because of his youth, made Adams a scapegoat on whom to pin this heinous crime. Whew. That's a big plot summary, and it's kind of interesting because it ties into the reality of this movie so much. This movie is almost the precursor to something like Making a Murderer. This is a documentary, came out in the late 80s, really changed the view of the investigation, even though the investigation was supposedly done. There were appeals being filed, and eventually helped get a man out of prison. There's also this element to this movie, if you're a fan of The Jinx, and what happened at the end of that very, very good documentary. I highly recommend you check it out. There's a moment quite like that at the end of this story as well. But outside of all that, looking at this as a piece of film, this is a really, really interesting movie. It is shot almost in the auteur film style, like 1970s, really creative filmmaking. It feels a little out of time for it coming out in the late 80s because things have kind of moved in a bit more of a commercial direction. But there are really interesting shots, very interesting close-ups. It's almost heartbreaking in some ways to hear how women are talked about in this film, considering that it was in the late 80s. My wife actually had a few comments about that as we were watching it, as well as African Americans. It's really, really heartbreaking because, you know, we go to school and we're shown history books and they tell us about these things that happened and supposedly these problems are done when those things happen, and it's just not the reality of it. These problems linger on to this day in some form, and it's really, for as far as we've come in certain ways, it's very interesting to see other ways where we might not be progressing so quickly. And this movie is definitely a good hallmark of that. It's a nice little time capsule in terms of what life was like in the late 80s, particularly for these guys in Dallas, Texas. But references to older TV shows and things like that is kind of cool. But it's shot really, really interestingly, and it does not beat you over the head with its narrative. It's not trying to tell you the whole time, hey, this guy is innocent, this guy is innocent. But as the story unfolds, as the facts all come out, it leaves the question sitting firmly in your lap. And by the end of this movie, I can tell you, we immediately jumped on Google to find out what happened to both of these men after the fact. So the story does continue past where this movie ends. But very well shot. Errol Morris, I don't know if he did other work, but he really has a fantastic eye for cinematography, and I hope that maybe he had done some feature films. I'm going to have to do a little investigation of my own and see if he did some other work, because I really like the way this thing was shot. And you know, it's a good counter to a lot of the stories that we hear nowadays, because we're hearing so many stories about police brutality. This is from a time where, you know, the tables were reversed a little bit, and you have someone killing a police officer, and there are definitely different implications that come with that, because you hear some things about how, oh, you know, the police usually solve crimes where their own officers are killed very quickly, like within a matter of days. And I've looked at statistics about that before. Those cases are usually always solved. Where cases where civilians are killed, I think we all know what goes on there. It's not quite as high a percentage. So, interesting story on many fronts. Very well shot. I think you'll really enjoy it. IMDb rates it an 8.1 out of 10. Which I guess is their highest rating for a mystery documentary, because it's sitting on top of their list. That's with over 14,000 votes, so a lot of people really seem to appreciate this movie. It is paced a little bit differently. If you're a fan of Brain Scratch, I think that you're the type of person that settles in for the information, and you're probably going to be fine with the pacing here. But occasionally, you know, some people even accuse me of, dude, you're just rambling on, or blah, blah. Some people might feel like this movie is a little slow in places. However, if you're paying attention to the details and looking to find the truth in it, there's always something that's coming out. So there's always something to look for in this narrative. So I highly recommend you check it out. I was able to catch it on Netflix here in the US. I'm sure it's on other digital platforms wherever you live. Do yourself a favor. You can get a pretty good piece of insight into justice, at least in the Texas area, in the late 80s, and a very intriguing mystery that has some pretty interesting twists and turns by checking out The Thin Blue Line. Thank you so much for joining me on this Geek and Dorks review. I will catch you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel. Have a great day.